Hey, it's Brooke and Jeffrey in the morning.
You can scroll it later, or better, you can listen live to Brooke and Jeffrey every weekday morning. Big fun, real moments, the laughs that make your day. Your station, your city, right now. That's called radio. In Seattle, that's called Moving 92.5.
And love has many faces. See it in the eyes that look right into your soul. Love has many faces. Proud and humble, beautiful and plain, and young and old.
Hello and welcome to Love Has Many Faces. I'm your host, Marilyn Milano, and I am happy to be bringing back a returning guest who we've had on the show many times because she's just always full of great ideas and information. And that guest is Annette Lanker of Holy Cow Critters. So I can't wait to hear some of the new seasonal updates, maybe things to be aware of, some safety tips for the dogs and cats as we come into a little different season. And again, just some housekeeping here, a reminder to our listeners, we are now podcasting as well. So of course, you can catch this show every Tuesday morning from 9 to 9:30 Pacific time here on Alternative Talk 1150, or you can listen online. And we also now podcast. So if you just go into your browser and type Love Has Many Faces podcast, it will take you to the podcast page, or just go wherever you get your podcasts. And again, type in Love Has Many Faces podcast, and it will come up. So we are here to raise awareness, touch hearts, and help save the lives of animals. And in doing that, we're helping their people too. So in just a moment, we will be back with our guest, Annette Lanker of Holy Cow Critters. Stay with us. I'm your host, Marilyn Milano, here on Alternative Talk 1150. Hi, this is Marilyn Milano, your host of Love Has Many Faces. The music that you're hearing during this show every week is exclusively original music from my own CDs. If you're enjoying it and would like to order a copy of one of my 2 CDs for yourself or as a gift, just go to marilynmilano.net and you can order directly from the website. I give a portion of every sale back to animal rescue because that's part of the whole cause. Thank you for listening, and thanks for your support.
Giving local voices a chance to shine. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Love Has Many Faces. I'm your host, Marilyn Milano. And again, very happy to bring back our returning guest, Annette Lanker. Annette, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me again, Marilyn. I love to chat with you guys.
Well, it's really fun to have you because you always are just a fountain of information and useful stuff. So I am thrilled that we are able to do this, and I can't wait to hear what's new. And as you and I just mentioned a moment ago when we were offline, it is spring. Yes, I mean, it'll be officially spring in about 3 weeks, but we're seeing sunshine here in Seattle. The temperatures are a little warmer, and a lot of things change in spring, including safety tips for dogs and some allergy tips for humans. So what's up front first?
Well, daylight savings time is this weekend. I could not believe it when I heard that on the radio today. So now, Monday or Tuesday, it'll be a good time to start trying to transition your pets for the time change. So we're going to spring ahead. So they're going to be very confused. And sometimes they don't sleep as well. And so maybe you can work a little bit on adjusting their feeding time, adjusting their pottying times, the time for their walks, and their bedtime, so that when you need to have sleep so that you can get up for your work week, they will be adjusted to the time change, even though it's probably going to take us a couple weeks to get used to it too.
I know. But it's crazy. I mean, Annette, do you find it harder to spring forward or fall back?
You know, I find it a little bit harder to fall back, but that's just me personally. I get up super early in the morning, and so I don't do really well when it's so dark outside.
Yeah, I get that. I've always been more of an evening person, although lately I seem to be neither an evening or a morning person. It's like I don't want to get up super early and I don't want to go to bed super late, but that just may be a baby boomer thing. I don't know. But I mean, my pets are interesting. If they get a good walk and if I feed them and get them out a couple times, they might sleep through the whole night, without waking me. They might sleep from like 9 o'clock p.m. till 4 or 5 in the morning. And if they don't, if the feeding's a little off or God knows what, they might get me up a couple of times. So it's been hard to totally regulate them, but we do our best. So, and I mean, what tips do you have just for pet people, like maybe setting the feeding time to coincide with the time change, both morning and afternoon, or what do you recommend?
So starting now, it's, this week before we hit that time change, just maybe adjusting it forward, since we're springing forward, try adjusting the feeding times a little bit, about 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the next couple of days. And then that way that they'll get used to it for the time change. But also just making sure they have more exercise. I know my cats has been in the window all day today, looking at the sunshine, looking at the birds outside. And so they're really knowing that spring is coming. The dogs want to be outside more. They keep running to the door and looking, and, other people in the neighborhood are out with their pets a lot more. And so that makes my guys want to be outside a lot more too. And so I think just being able to spend a little more time outside with them is something we all look forward to, especially here in the Northwest, because, we're happy to be getting out of that rainy season, hopefully. But that
Yes.
rainy season can be kind of hazardous a little bit in that it brings, a lot of things up out of the soil. We get a lot of mushrooms popping up in yards. We get some windstorms and stuff like that. So it's super important that people check their yards before they're letting their pets outside, to just make sure that there's not any hazards outside. Maybe something's blowing out of some of the trees. Like I said, maybe mushrooms have popped up. Most of the mushrooms in our yards are not really good for our pets.
Right.
They can be toxic to them. And so if nothing else, worst case scenario, your dogs at least want to roll in them and dig them up because they like that musty smell. So being able to get those out of your yard before you let them run the risk of ingesting them can be super important.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, so where I live, I have kind of a zero lot line yard. And so my dogs, even when I just take them out the back door for a quick piddle, they're on the leash. And I mean, I used to walk out back with them and just stand there for 10 or 20 seconds. But since I realized that the coyotes have been very close by in the last couple of years, and raccoons and other things, they're always on their leash. And with pavers, we don't have too much of a problem with mushrooms, but you go down the street and there's a little green patch. And like a couple months ago, there were the most disgusting looking mushrooms. And I remember posting something on one of the public forums to just let people know. And I got all this snark back about most of them aren't harmful and they're beautiful and let them be. And I'm like, yeah, that's all fine and good until your dog or cat is poisoned.
Right, exactly. And they may be okay for us, but maybe not for our pets. And there are so many of them. I mean, I know we have a lot of very good edible mushrooms and truffles and things like that around here, but I am not educated in that realm. And so I would rather be safe than sorry with my pets. And like I said, worst case scenario, they ingest them, but best case scenario, they're rolling around in them. And then you've got to, wash the dogs and that sort of thing. And so I just figure if you can get out there and just, dig them up and dispose of them, until you know that they're safe for your pets, I think that that's really the best case scenario. And then we also want to be aware too, you mentioned coyotes. It's getting into coyote mating season. And so we're going to start having kits in the next few weeks. And so the coyotes are especially active right now because it's their mating season. We're heading into their mating season. And so any small fluffy things are going to be definitely looked at a little bit differently by the coyotes because they're a little more active. So it's super important, like you said, to be out there with them on the leash. With the dogs on the leash, not the coyotes.
No. Don't leash up the coyotes. Well, I mean, so I'm a helicopter parent with my dogs, right? I mean, it's probably a good thing I didn't have children. I probably would have smothered them, just with like over attentiveness and being worried. But I mean, I've seen a couple of coyotes the last couple of times, well, maybe a week or two ago when I was out for a walk. And the particular one I saw did not bother me, but some of them have become less afraid of humans. And, there are people that still poo-poo that, but we have heard instances of some of them being aggressive. So I've heard all kinds of things. I've heard you're supposed to haze them, which is to make a lot of loud noise, or don't run from them, or try not to make eye contact. I mean, you've worked a lot in the pet community. What do you suggest?
Well, you want to try to make yourself look big if at all possible. And then just try to avoid them as much as possible because, like I said, during mating season, they're going to be more aggressive and they're going to be more bold. And so, trying to make a lot of noise and scare them off may not work. And so it's best to just, if you see them, to kind of try to avoid them, maybe go the other direction. I would make some noise. Like I said, try to make yourself look big, but then, go the other direction and keep your dogs on a very short leash when you see them. I had a friend who a couple years ago, she was out in the yard with her dogs and a coyote jumped the fence and grabbed one of them. She has several dogs. And so there were quite a few. I think she had 5 dogs at the time, 4 or 5 dogs. But, one of them strayed a little too far and it was just a flash that the coyote hopped the fence and grabbed one and hopped out. So it can happen even if you're out there. They are, like you said, getting very bold because we're encroaching in their territory. We're building in a lot of areas. And so it's just important to just be safe. And so I would rather, if I see coyotes, and my dogs are at least the size of coyotes, they're bigger than yours are, but I'm not going to mess with them.
No. I mean, mine are the size of little munchies, like, oh, look, a chicken McNugget, I mean, it's like, well, they're not that small, but they're cute little Cocker Spaniels. So, I mean, and God forbid anything ever happened. But I remember in Magnolia about a year ago, for those that might be listening from other areas, Magnolia is a little suburb of Seattle, but a coyote hopped the fence and grabbed the dog and the woman went after it and they both got bitten. They both survived, but it was pretty scary. So along with, and my least favorite thing is insects. I'm just not thrilled about the insects coming home to roost. The mushrooms scare me a bit too. I am not going to forage for them. I mean, there are people that do it. No, I'll buy them from the grocery store or eat them in a restaurant, but no, I'm not going to mess with mushrooms.
Exactly.
Chicken. So aside from mushrooms and coyotes, we talked briefly about allergies. So what happens with pet allergies this time of year? Has there been a pattern you've noticed or?
Well, we haven't had a really strong freeze for the last couple of years. So insects, like you mentioned, are going to be bad. We're going to start seeing fleas. We didn't really see fleas disappear at all this summer. They were a little less, but we still had fleas throughout the year for most people. Ticks, I estimate, are going to probably be fairly bad because, again, we haven't had a big frost. And so we want to be watching for that. And then as our pollinators start getting busier because of the weather, the flowers start blooming and the bees and the wasps and everything are going to be out. So I know my dogs love those spicy sky raisins and they tend to chase after them or try to eat them. And so I have to really be aware of that sort of thing because those can be, they can have an allergic reaction just like a person can.
Yes, I mean the sky raisins. I've heard that. I've heard that description before, and it's so funny. But I remember a dog we had many, many years ago, and he was very playful and fun. He was a golden retriever. This was back when I was growing up, and he was chasing after a bee, and he caught it. And all of a sudden, he was shaking his head like crazy, and then he spit it out, and the bee flew out, and there was no reaction. I mean, he was fine, but again, they're curious. Earlier this fall, I found a couple of large spiders in my home, even though I, treat around the perimeter of the home because I hate insects. But you can find these things. And like you said, with fleas, I mean, flea allergies can be just terrible. Now, there are differing opinions as to natural products and using products that are medicines. There have been some animals with reactions to medications. There have been differing opinions as to which ones are safe. I know in my case, I tried several natural remedies and having my home treated professionally like 3 times, and they were still covered in fleas, and my dogs live inside. And I wound up having to go with what I determined through my vet to be the least toxic. And so they have been on something now for the last 2 years. They're doing well. They've had no reaction. But what do you suggest, like if people are dealing with fleas for the first time, maybe they haven't dealt with it before, they don't have a protocol yet that they're comfortable with?
So I tend to favor the more natural solutions just because I take one of my dogs into the hospital to visit patients. And so he has to be bathed within 24 hours prior to going in. He's got to have his teeth brushed, the whole works. And I just feel personally that most of those chemicals can be known carcinogens and known neurotoxins. And if I'm going in to see patients that maybe already have cancer or maybe have weakened immune systems, I really don't want to be exposing them to anything like that. And so
Sure.
we tend to use kind of a more natural approach. And we also work, if we have issues with fleas popping up, we treat our house and our yard with diatomaceous earth, food grade diatomaceous earth, which you can get from a lot of different sources out there. And it's something that we put along the baseboards of our house, and it works as a desiccant. So and it's sharp, so they're literally diatoms from the ocean, and they will puncture the outside shell of the ticks. I'm trying not to use the technical terms, which is what just normally comes out of my mouth for that.
Yeah.
So it's not that I think that the listeners are stupid, but I don't want to use words that people might not understand.
Oh, yeah.
And so the diatoms from the earth that are in with the coral and different things like that, they're little creatures that live in there. Actually, when they're dried out, are a great way to treat ticks, and and fleas, and they can be used topically on your pets. You put it on, you let them, get into the skin a little bit, and then you brush it out or vacuum it out. You don't leave it on long term. It can also be food grade, can also be added to their food. And then, like I said, we use it along the baseboards and in the cushions of our furniture and stuff like that. We let it sit for a couple of hours and then we vacuum it up.
Interesting.
It can be a respiratory irritant to dogs and cats if they're sniffing it up.
Right. Well, again, and I've had this conversation with folks about foods and such too, because that's another topic for another time. But a lot of times we just have to try solutions, work with our veterinary people, work with the people that understand some of the natural products and figure out what's going to work. And I mean, what I liken it to is there are some people that can drink milk, no problem, and other people can't, or people that can eat wheat and people who can't. And
exactly.
So, not to feel ashamed if you've tried one solution and it doesn't work. I mean, just try. And of course, I'm very careful. I don't ever want to use the super toxic things or the systemic things unless it is totally a last resort, because there can be more issues with that. But yes, insects, I am not looking forward. I was really excited when it got to be 27 degrees a couple nights. And then it was like, okay, it's still warm and bugs are coming out. And so it doesn't thrill me. But yes. And the other thing, Annette, I didn't think there used to be ticks in this area. But now, I mean, I thought they were only east of the mountains, but now it seems like they are here for sure. So what's your take on that?
So yeah, really important if you're out in a brushy area, a field, or you go hiking or something with your pets, to really make sure and check both yourself and any humans that are hiking with you, but also your pets really well, to look for signs of ticks afterwards, because we do have issues with tick-borne diseases, just like our pets can get Lyme disease just like humans can.
Yes. And there is a friend of a friend that's on Facebook, and has her adult daughter has been suffering with Lyme disease. It is not a fun thing. Sometimes it doesn't really go away. So, I mean, we do have to be careful. So whenever somebody gives me the bit on a bug, it's so small, you're 1,000 times bigger, it can't hurt you. I'm like, oh, yes, it can. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a reason to avoid them. Now, I want to stop for just a minute and again, repeat your website info, which is holycowcritters.com, correct?
Correct. Yes. And I can be found on all the social media platforms at Holy Cow Critters also.
Okay, so if somebody's on Facebook and that's their, what about Instagram?
Facebook, Instagram. I'm not super active on YouTube yet. I've got a couple of things up. So usually just Facebook and Instagram are usually the best choices to get a hold of me.
And if they want to go on your website, they can find answers to questions or a deeper dive into some of the topics we have been touching on, for example, or contact you directly to get more information.
Correct. Yes. And it also, they can contact me if they're interested in pet CPR classes too.
I was just going to mention that. You took the words literally out of my mouth. I was talking to someone today who said they did not know how to do pet CPR for their dogs. And I said, I'm just going to be talking with someone today who does that. So for those that maybe haven't listened to any of our conversations in the past where we, dug into that a little bit more, can you just do a quick overview of some of the pet CPR training available and what's important to know?
So The things that we cover in the classes that I teach, it's a full day class. We teach over 50 different skills for survival. We teach 3 different styles of CPR because if you look at a Chihuahua compared to a Great Dane, compared to a puppy or kitten, they're all different sizes and shapes. And so we teach different styles. We teach kind of a gold standard, and then we teach a couple of variations on that. We talk a lot about choking. We talk about bee stings. We talk about, even though we don't have them over here, we talk about poisonous snake bites, things like that in case people go camping over in Eastern Washington or down into Oregon or something like that. We talk about drowning, electrocution, fires. We talk about heat injuries, hot cars and things like that. And so just kind of pretty much anything you can think of. And then, of course, bandaging and first aid techniques, fractures, that sort of thing.
And now, do people bring their pets to these classes, or do they work on stuffed animals for practice, or how does that work?
They practice on stuffed animals because we don't know if everybody's dogs would get along. So we don't have any pets in class. Of course, fully trained service dogs are more than welcome to attend with their people. And if you've got a mature young person in your home, usually we start about 10 to 12, depending on the maturity level of the kids. But if they want to come with their parents, they're more than welcome to sign up. I've actually had a couple of young girls took my class last summer because they wanted to do some pet sitting around their neighborhood, feed the neighbors' cats and things like that when they were on vacation. And they wanted to be prepared just in case.
I think that's so great because, there's so much that we can be aware of. And sometimes it feels like it's impossible to be prepared for every eventuality. But if we at least have a good overview, we're going to be in a lot better shape. And again, everybody who cares about their animal wants their pet to be healthy and happy and safe. And we know they can't live forever, but we want to give them the best shot at the longest life we can. And so those skills are important to know. Now we've got a couple minutes left before we have to wrap up. And I say this every time, I know, but it's amazing how fast time goes when we're having a conversation about things that are important to dog and cat and pet people. Do you have any last minute thoughts, tips, or little nuggets of wisdom to leave with our listeners today?
So I would just want to make people aware as we head into the spring season that bulbs are not edible for our pets. They can be very toxic. And a lot of us like to bring in Easter lilies, and Easter lilies can be extremely toxic to cats. The bulbs are toxic. And then the little yellow pollen parts that are inside the white flowers, those are extremely toxic. If your cat brushes up against them and then grooms that pollen off of their fur, that can put them into kidney failure really fast. So don't bring the Easter lilies in, or use some artificial ones, or make sure at the very, very least that you take that yellow pollen parts out of the inside of the white flower, and that you wipe any of the remaining, any of that dust that might come off as you're taking it off out of the flower itself, just because it can be very, very, very toxic.
And is that to cats and dogs, or mainly cats?
Both, but mainly cats, because cats tend to brush up against things like that and then groom themselves, whereas dogs shake things off a little bit more. And depending on the breed, my breeds tend to groom themselves a little bit. I have sighthounds, so they're groomers, but cats are always grooming themselves afterwards, after they get something on them. And so they tend to ingest things a little bit more commonly like that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. The other thing too is that if you have dogs like I do that are too small to jump up on high counters, you think, well, if I put something up and if it does drop off, it's going to drop off on the furniture or whatever. But if you have cats, they can get up on everything. And,
yes.
I mean, I have never had cats, but have lots of friends that have, and it would just be a whole other level of having to pet proof your home for their safety, because and so many people just aren't aware. They're good, loving pet parents, but there are so many things to be aware of.
Yes.
And then the final tip that I always think of is the suffocation if they get into a cereal box or a chip bag. And with more snacking and maybe as picnics and barbecues start coming up a little bit later in the season, we want to keep our animals away from any plastic bags or boxes or anything. It can happen while you're home, just around the corner in another room, and it can happen really fast. So that's another thing to be aware of to keep your pet as safe as you can.
Yes, if you eat a chip or something that comes in a plastic bag, crackers or cereal, like you said, make sure when you go to throw that bag away that you cut it wide open so that they can't get in there, because they're going to want to get in there and get those crumbs. And it, like you said, it happens in just seconds. It can happen so fast.
It can. Well, forewarned is forearmed. And again, as always, you've had wonderful information for us. So, Annette, thank you so much for taking some time to be on the show. We'll have you come back again down the road a bit. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Thank you to Annette Lanker of Holy Cow Critters. I'm Marilyn Milano, your host of Love Has Many Faces, and we will be right back.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to newprosupplements.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, March 8th, it's our energy balancing show with best practitioner Linda Rasmussen. We'll take your phone calls, and Linda will help you and your animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues. Hope you can join us for your free remote treatments. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Hi, I'm Coach Debbie from Story U Talk Radio, and I want to encourage you to write your book. Weekly, I offer topics about style and storytelling. I take your questions on our live show every Thursday at 4 o'clock, or you can subscribe to Story U, that's capital U, on any of your favorite platforms.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/1150KKNW.
Welcome back to Love Has Many Faces. And again, I was just so pleased to have Annette back with us for another conversation. She's very knowledgeable and helpful, and this information is timeless. So please share it with your other pet-loving friends. Again, everything from avoiding mushrooms that are growing in your yard to keeping your pets away from chip bags and boxes when you're snacking, allergens, different insects. You want to be aware of fleas and ticks. There's a lot of things to be aware of, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, it's a minefield out there. But really, when you know and have a good plan, you can keep your pet so much happier and healthier. And again, like I'd said earlier in the show, we're here to raise awareness, touch hearts, and help save the lives of animals. And in doing that, we're making things better for their people too. So thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week. I am Marilyn Milano, your host of Love Has Many Faces here on Alternative Talk 1150.